Hey everybody, real quick, let's go over what's gonna happen for Lab 2, how to access the lab and what the activities will be. So again, on our Canvas page, Module 2, you can get the link to our content in our Studio Cloud. Just copy and paste your browser. And let me log out and log in as a regular student. I'll log in with Google because I created a Google account where I see the content as a student, not as a faculty. You're going to see your Intro to Data with R lab. That's the lab you want to click on. When you get to the lab, remember it takes a little bit to load. Let's just wait. There it is. Now, here, this time, you will have Guided Activity Lab 2. Then you have the Guided Activity Lab 2 key. Then you have the Independent Activity Lab 2. Don't worry about these test things. Those are RMDs that I use to install some of the computing environment for you. So the only things you have to worry about, and you won't see the Word document, this is because I already needed the lab just to test things out. But a couple of things that came up this week. Some people said, oh my gosh, I opened my RMD, then I started doing my activity, then I decided I wanted to start over. What do I do? Well, if you click on your Guided Activity Lab 2, the first thing you can do if you want to have a clean copy to go back to in case you mess things up and it's easier to just start from scratch, you can simply, at the beginning, before you do anything, you can hit File, Save As, just like you do in your computer, you know, to save a Word document. You come here and before the .rmd, you can, I don't know, have Guided Activity Lab 2 copy. So you save a copy, and that copy will appear in your little space here, in your file space here. All right? And you can do the same for the key, because some of the students said, oh, after I looked at the key, I messed the key up instead of working on the document. You know, it's no problem if you do that if you have a copy saved in there. So same thing, you know, save as. Make sure you modify the name before the .rmd. Leave the .rmd there at the end. So you just do copy. So you know it's your copy. It's just a backup. So you don't work on that initially, but you can have that as a backup. And then if you need that backup, you can say copy 2, copy 3, or how many times you need it. Make sense? Other simple mistakes that happened. When you're doing the guided activity, all right, you can have the guided key, the file with the answers, right, open up side by side. Makes it easy to go back and forth. So imagine you're working through the lab and you see that I'm asking you to load a data set here. And then you click on it and you load it, and then you come here and you visualize the data set. It's already there, the code is already there. Some of you thought that you needed to somehow replicate that. Every time the code is already there is for you to have an example of how to create the code, so that in the independent activity, I'll ask you, now do the same for this other data set, right? So that you kind of know how to do. So you don't need to recreate anything. When the code is already there, all you do is hit the green arrow, and that's it. Just so you can see what the output looks like and in experience running the code. And all I want you to do is to make sure you understand what I'm doing here. For example, here I'm loading a data set from a web page, and I use the function source. Here, you know, the data set is called ARPANET, and I want to look at it. If I want to print something, I just type the name of the object that's right there on the workspace. That is what you need to understand. You don't need to retype anything here. All right? Okay, the one new thing that will happen this time is that to successfully go through the lab, I had to install some packages in our computing environment. You don't have to install it because it's implicitly shared with you. It's ready there for you. But I installed it. But even though I installed the package, you still have to load the package. And the function we use to load is called library. And we're using two packages here from R, one called Tidyverse that has a bunch of useful functions, including the mutate function that you see through the lab that we use to add stuff to the data set. And we're also using ggplot2, which is an amazing package that will help you do data visualization. All right. So I have installed these two packages for you already. You don't have to install it, but you do have to load it. What do you have to do? Same as you do for every code I type for you. Simply hit this little arrow. Okay? The first time you hit, there might be some comments at the bottom here. Do not worry, this is not an error. It's just an output saying, there are some conflicts here. This is what I installed. This is what I didn't install. So, when you load it, if you see some output at the bottom, don't worry. It's normal. All right? I will not do as I did the first lab to record myself reading the lab and going through it, because all I did was literally read what is there. So you can read it and go through the lab. So you do that for the guided activity, then you do the independent activity. The difference with the independent activity is not that it's harder than the guided activity. It's going to be pretty similar to the guided activity. And all I will want you to do is to kind of extend and transfer some of the knowledge you gained in the guided activity to the independent one. I will still have the template. You can just, add the code to where it's indicated to you that you need to insert the code to answer the different exercises. Something really important. Independent activity does not mean you can't ask for help. If you're stuck, you can ask a friend for help. You can work together with a friend, as we talked about in our live session. And you can ask me questions. You can ask Dalton questions. Dalton Cooper. His email, again, is on the syllabus. When you're copying and pasting code between the guided activity and the independent activity, you have to be careful with one thing. Let me open the independent activity here. You'll see that at some point I'm going to ask you, let me see. I'm going to ask you something like, plot the variable. Here, plot the variable proportion of boys born in particular years over time. Plot that variable. What do you need to do? You need to go to your guided activity and find a code that we used to plot, you go to the guided activity and you find code for plotting. Let's see. Here, I'm plotting something here. In this case, I'm plotting the number of girls that were born. So you can copy and paste that code and change it according to the particular, the specificity of the problem in the independent activity, which will basically be changing the variable names, changing the dataset name. But you'll see what I mean when you go through the lab. What I want to highlight here is that when you're copy and pasting, don't copy and paste the box. That will create trouble. Just copy and paste the code itself, copy, and then you go to your independent activity and you say, okay, here's where I'm going to plot stuff. I think it's, I'm asking you plot the variable. So you go in between this 3 little quote marks and this thing here, between this and this. Don't delete those things, not even one little thing. not even one of these things. If you do that, that's a problem. This is indicating to R that a code is about to begin and that the code has ended. So here it is, I copy and paste, and then here I'm going to say, what's the data set called for the independent activity? It's not ARP-NOT, it is present. So I'm going to change that. And the variable I want is year, but not girls. I really want just prop boys. So you do the required changes. Remember, it's sensitive. Prop boys. So you do your changes, but when you're copying them, make sure you're not deleting this thing and this thing, or accidentally copying these things from the other one and pasting it to the middle of this box, because this is the kind of thing that can generate error. All right. Last thing before I let you go and do your work, I will on Wednesday at 11. This is the time that won the poll I'll put out there. So every Wednesday at 11, from 11 to 12 or 12:30 if needed, or even 1 if needed, I will be there, and I will go over the guided activity live. So I'll start from the top, the guided activity. I'll go over the guided activity step by step from the beginning. Here's what we do, this is why, and then you can have yours opened and follow along. It will be very helpful if you have tried to work out yours, so you have errors that we can debug together during the live session, so you can take the most advantage of it. But this is what I'll do, and I'll record it live instead of record it beforehand, as I did last time. This was a suggestion from students when we talked today, and I will do that. I'll be there, and I hope most of you can make it. If you can't make it, we'll record so you can see it. And again, it's not a required thing, and you can be entirely successful in this class while being fully asynchronous and remote. All right? Okay, thank you very much, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye-bye.